All right, everybody, welcome to another Developer Livecast here on the Game Wisdom channel. I am Josh Placer, and we have another great one for you tonight. My guest tonight is an indie developer who has currently just released his game Thrusty Ship, which he actually submitted to the Indie Game Spotlight stream. And he's on tonight to kind of talk about that, as well as being a developer, and I'm sure many design chats as well. So please welcome from In Principle Games, Mike.
Hello.
Hey, Mike, it is a pleasure to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Yourself?
I am doing all right. Looks like we just got a pound super chat donation from Mojo. Thank you so much for the support there. He's trying to throw me off my game before we even got started for the podcast there. But it is great to have you on, and thank you for submitting your game for the independent spotlight stream. It was a lot of fun to play.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I wanted to thank you for playing it in the first place. You went on quite a bit, didn't you? Like several hours. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think we got like good 2 hours or so, playing it. We got to the third world there, and I don't know what's going on with the chat there. There you go, that's better. But we got pretty far.
Yeah. Yeah, I was quite chuffed with it.
And it was great to have you on, kind of cheering me on and the talking design while we were trying to play through it.
I don't know if trolling you and cheering you on are synonyms, but I'll take it.
Yeah. But it was great to have the game and have you there. And for any developers watching this right now, we're always looking for games for the next Spotlight stream. I'll be probably making an announcement in early March for it. That was a Thrusty Ship, Mojo. There you go. But there is certainly a lot to talk about. So, since this is your first time on, if you wouldn't mind kind of giving your background when it comes to game development, I guess a little bit about who you are.
Sure. So I'll give you the very short version of my life. I was born in a country that doesn't exist anymore, called Yugoslavia. When I was 6, the country I lived in, the area I lived in, declared independence and became Slovenia. So that was my first citizenship that I obtained. I was born to an Italian mother and Serbo-Croatian father, technically. So I had access to the Italian citizenship and therefore moved to Italy when I was 14 to study. I studied linguistics and other things there. That's why, even though I'm Italian, I don't sound like this, right? I can actually fake it a little bit. And I've moved to the United Kingdom to go work for Rockstar Games as a QA analyst in localization QA. And there I worked on Manhunt 2, Bully Scholarship Edition, Rockstar Presents Table Tennis, GTA 4, Midnight Club LA, and there I decided that I wasn't moving up the ladder fast enough, which was very foolish considering how young I was, but I still decided that, and therefore I moved to another company in the United Kingdom called Codemasters, which are both developers and publishers. There I worked on games like Overlord 2, I worked on Dirt 2, which was a lot of fun, met lots of cool people. And I already had a plan that I wanted to move to Canada. So I managed to find a job in Montreal for a company called Babel Media, which I think has been now acquired, so they're under a different name. But at any rate, these are localization experts. They've done loads of work for many companies. Now, for most of the games that I've worked on there, I can't really comment what they are, at least not, I don't know, publicly. I mean, the NDA is probably gone by now, but still. Let's just say it was some pretty big titles like 2K stuff, for instance, was one of my main clients that I worked with. And there I moved up the ladder. I became management fairly quickly. And then I carved a role for myself as a tools programmer, which should surprise everyone because it doesn't fit in the career arch to any degree. But I learned how to code stuff for localization, which was really useful. And then I desperately tried to move into a production role. And I found a job at EA, Vancouver, as a user experience researcher, which was very convenient because being European, I'm very much a fan of the football. So ending up working on FIFA was just sort of a natural progression. And there I learned quite a lot about user experience, research, stat analysis, and that sort of stuff. So that was quite interesting. I worked there for about 3 years until I felt that the AAA world was restrictive for me. All of my career movements kept on going up, whereas I wanted to move sideways and do all sorts of other things, and that's kind of not possible in the industry, or at least not in my experience. So I decided I'm going to go indie. I'm too young not to try and too old to delay it any further. So I went independent, and I've been independent for a year and a half, and so far pretty much an endless string of failures. But that's quite normal, I think. But yeah, so that's basically where I'm at right now. I've released 2 games as an indie. One of them is called Ovo Smash, and it's on Steam. It's a competitive multiplayer memory match game. And the second game that I have released is Thrusty Ship. I have done countless game jams and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, that's basically the story. So I'm Canadian too now. I've got three citizenships.
Nice. Well, like that is definitely a very interesting, I guess, chart in terms of where you've gone when it comes to the game industry. So I gotta ask, like, how was it like working at Rockstar? Like, again, I'm sure there's NDAs and such, but did you at least enjoy your time there?
I loved it. Yeah, working at Rockstar is the perfect place for me. Well, was at the time. I suspect it may have changed now. The world is moving forward in a direction that I don't necessarily appreciate. I apologize about this, the phone ringing. I can't control that.
That's
It's
all
the
right.
home phone. Yeah, when I joined, it was very much a sausage fest, so to speak. Everybody was a bro. It was very friendly. During lunch breaks, we would play Street Fighter, Thirst Strike, and taunt each other. It was absolutely fantastic. I have anecdote upon anecdote upon anecdote of working there, and I miss it very much. In my later life, as I moved into management and stuff like that, everything became much stiffer, much less fun, and much more professional and limiting. That weighed on me for sure. I'm very happy that I've moved on from there, so I can be, free to be a bit of a fool if I want to be, because I'm my own boss and my own employee. So.
Yeah. And we have certainly heard that from many developers who've gone from the AA, AAA side to starting their own indie company. Looks like Draken is asking you what was better, London versus Canada.
I've never lived in London, but I suspect I wouldn't like it. I am very much a person who prefers to live far from cities if possible.
Hmm.
So sprawling metropolises, sprawling big cities are not my environment. I don't like them. In fact, right now I live so rural that, I mean, if I were a little bit more rural, I'd be off grid basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for me, I'm more of a suburban guy myself. I don't like the big cities either.
there you go.
Yeah, give me the space to get out and relax and stuff.
So I suppose the answer to London versus Canada would very definitely be Canada. Yeah. So there you go.
So, Dragon was also about Overlord 2. Yeah, I really like the Overlord franchise. I think I've played the first 2 of them.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't mind the first 2, I believe, but I don't know what happened to them. I think they were made by a Norwegian team. I know they were published by Codemasters.
Hmm.
I'm really not sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely interesting, again, to like see, like, you say you worked at Rockstar during Manhunt 2, Table Tennis, so was that like 2000, I want to say 2007, 2008, or I may be messing up the timeline here.
No, you're bang on. 2007 was my first year in the workforce, yes.
Wow. That was just a complete shot in the dark, too, because I am
Well,
horrible with years, too. But,
headshot.
yeah. But the industry has certainly come a long way and has continued to come a very long way, especially in these last few years. So when did you start in Principal Games?
1.5 years ago, precisely the 25th of July 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that would be it, I think. So probably a little bit more, almost 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I guess like from where you've been, like in terms of being from the outside of the independent scene and getting in, like what do you think about kind of the independent market? Because this has kind of been like the big topic that's been going on at least so far in 2019.
Well, there's quite a lot to say, and I'm far from being an expert in it. But I am assuming, I mean, I would probably like to focus in on a specific part of what I understand to be the question. So, the thing that concerns me the most as the indie market, so to speak, would be the quantity of shovelware that is now
Mm-hmm.
present everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, indie is now almost a meaningless term. I mean, I don't think it was ever very well defined, but nowadays it's more absurdly illogical to use it as a term because you're going to have Rocket League, that's an indie game,
Mm-hmm.
and then or Sinua's whatever it's called. I've never played it. I'm not much into narrative-driven games, but also I don't know something that was released yesterday on Steam for $2.30.
Mm-hmm.
Right? These are all indie.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. I mean, it makes sense, but it makes no sense from a sort of classification perspective, right? So, as an independent developer, in my case, who works alone, you are competing with all of the triple A's, double A's, quadruple A's, how many A's you want to put, people who spend bazillions on their games. Then you're competing with the triple I's, like Rocket League, right? And then you're competing with all of the people like yourself who are trying to establish themselves. And then on top of that, you find yourself basically swimming in this sea of unfinished or games that do not belong on stores,
Mm-hmm.
like on any store, anywhere, right? I
Yeah.
mean, one could put them on itch or Game Jolt or something equivalent as, hey, look at my little pet project. Yeah, that's fine. But what you're seeing on Steam at the moment, as an example, is I think we are about to hit 1,000 games per month being released
Mm-hmm.
that are just inferior products. That they're not products. I mean, they are from asset flips to trite game design ideas, etc., etc. One thing that you may have noticed is that in Thrusty Ship, I attempt to create something different. It is a platformer, but it behaves in a different fashion.
Mm-hmm.
It's got puzzles that other games don't have, at least not to my knowledge. Right? I tried to do that, but because I'm alone and self-published, it's not possible, as far as I can tell, for me to reach any media whatsoever. In fact, all of my media outreach has fallen completely flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy to share, even fairly precise numbers in terms of how Thrusty Ship is done, but the result is abysmally poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, since you just found us like this past weekend, like we do every week, we have a live show like around like 3:30 on Sundays, and one of the things that we do during that is talk about what games are coming out, basically the weird and the bottom of the barrel when it comes to Steam releases, and
Okay.
there.
Hope your barrel is very large.
Yes, it is. It's gotten. It's down to like a, the old saying that if you dig deep enough, you go to China. That's where we hit right now.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're on Jupiter right now, but carry on.
But like the number of games being released, and again, it's being released daily. That's the crazy thing about this, is that
Mhm.
there is just so much being released, and again, it's just not of any real quality. There's one about in chat a game that we found, like again, like one of these random games that was being released on Steam. I think it was like delayed like 10 times. It sounded like, every triggering marketing term you could think of for a video game. Yeah, it was something like that. I don't want to look it up here because I don't want to get any more flags on there. I'm pretty sure these streams get flagged now from YouTube because of all the weird stuff we describe that's out there. But the point is that, as you said, it's gotten to this situation where you release a game and you are immediately buried by 30 to 50 games that day all of varying qualities, all random. So it could even just be like somebody releasing I know nudity DLC for a game. That could be the new release on Steam for that day that your game is next to. Oh, and
Hmm.
oh, hi Mike. We were just talking about we're talking about independent development, so get ready for that one. Mike is a friend and supporter who we got into many discussions about the state of the independent market with. But it's definitely been a very tough time, and I this is a question that I've asked a few developers about, and I think I know your answer. But when Steam Direct came about and was charging people, $100 a pop to get on Steam, there were
Hmm.
arguments about whether or not that was considered too much, not enough, or just being useless. I guess, what did you make of that?
Well, so uh, I never released anything before
Hmm.
the Steam Direct situation, but I'm going to take a completely different route. My take on this is that it's not Steam's responsibility to fix this
Hmm.
in to any degree. So what Steam has done is they've taken the philosophical position of the free market,
Yep.
which is a philosophical position that I am very, very much aligned with. So they're very laissez-faire, and I think this is the correct way to be. I think the issue is completely different and much, much more complicated.
Hmm.
What we have right now is a situation in which an enormous amount of young people, well, young or old really,
Hmm.
seem to be capable of having essentially infinite time on their hands that they can spend on pursuits like building video games because somehow they think that absolutely everybody can do this. Um, which is, I mean, it is the case in the sense that everybody can do anything, right? But there is a profound difference between making a thing that people are willing to pay for and making a thing that people are not willing to pay for. And as you can see, the Steam market is working perfectly fine, right? So people see all of this junk and they say, "Yeah, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in your game that costs $4, $3. You could put it 95% down and it will cost 4 cents, and I still won't buy it."
Hmm.
Because what's happening now is a severe phenomenon of inflation of each product, right? So all of the games are worth nothing the way a currency would be worth in a country that keeps printing it. It's exactly the same principle. At least this is my interpretation of it. And it's not Steam's job, it's not Valve's job to moderate this or change this. Because, for example, when you release a game on Steam, they actually do a small amount of quality control that is intended to sort of support the consumer. So if in your description you say, I have controller support, right? They will actually check that. If your controller support works or doesn't work or partially works, etc., they'll get back to you and they'll say, we're not approving your game, right? What Steam has decided they will not do for any reason is they will not basically decide to become arbitrary critics as to what belongs there
Hmm.
and what does not. They will say, you release whatever you want, and the market will reward you if you deserve it, or will punish you if you will not. We're just going to give you the opportunity to do it. Right?
Hmm.
The reason why this is kind of controversial because Steam is sort of the go-to place
Yep.
for PC gaming, right? But it's a very bold and brave move as far as I can see, right? But obviously it comes with these strange situations. Anyway, long story short is I think we've got a much larger problem with the fact that there's a lot of people that are so um, not in touch with what is good enough to be put on a storefront that in fact are interacting with any storefront. It is absurd. If you go on itch, for example, right, and you take a look at all of the games that are being released today, it's essentially the same
Yep.
situation, right? Hundreds, worse, compounded, right?
Hmm.
Because there isn't even that $100 barrier,
Yep.
and they're ridiculous. I mean, they're stuff that my daughter can do, right? So it's a strange world of participation badges. I don't understand it, right?
Mm.
And individuals such as myself, who arguably, and this is very much arguably, it's not for me to decide, it's for you and
Hmm.
for people such as yourself to decide whether the game I've made is quality or not, are attempting at least to make a quality game, are suddenly fighting with all of this rabble, if you will.
Hmm.
and screaming at the person who enables you, who helps you to put the game somewhere in front of other people, like Steam does, seems to me to be completely, let's just say you're aiming at the wrong target.
Mm-hmm.
You're howling at the wrong moon. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And definitely a lot to unpack there, Mike. I mean, like for myself, like I feel the same way like with what I see on YouTube. As somebody who's been talking about video games now for 7 years, like it's very hard sometimes to keep going when like I put out a design topic that's been well researched, and you have people ranting about SJWs killing Battlefield, making like 500,000 views that day, and you're right, it is like there's just so much being released. And what you're saying about Steam, I think that's very fascinating, because I think you are the first developer we've had on, at least formally. I forget when I talked with Shark and Chad, we got on that topic as well. But I think you're the first one, at least in my current memory, to say that it's more or less on the developers rather than Steam. Because again, like, it is a very crazy time for the game industry, between everything that's going on, the whole quote-unquote digital store wars we're having right now. But like when it comes to Steam, and like you said, it's a very weird position that Steam is in. Like, again, we all remember like 10 years ago when Steam was pretty much closed doors. You had to know the guy who knew the guy who knew the guy who somehow knew somebody at Valve if you want to have any chance of getting your game on Steam. And it did hurt a lot of developers. But when we flash forward to today, it's kind of becoming, again, that issue of just pure inflation. I mean, I cover video games for a living, and even I can't keep up with what's coming out on a day-to-day basis. And
yeah, but sorry, continue.
I was going to say, and even with that said, there's so many games being released on a day-to-day basis that I don't even want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
Yes, but we must be careful not to be myopic, because it's not Steam. The same is occurring on the Google Store. The same is occurring on the App Store. The problem is very evidently, somewhere else. It's not an issue of access. Mm-hmm. It's an issue of there's a lot of pointless people. I mean, that's a strong term, I suppose. Pointless people making pointless things because they can. And this extends to completely separate things. I don't think it's got anything to do with game development either. It just happens to be that games are very popular, right? I wonder how many 30, 40-year-olds exist out there that are still desperately trying to make a music album, right? Like, for instance, I have 4 children. Well, 3. One is on the way, right? I'm very focused on family, and I homeschool all of my children, right? So I am a very, very busy man. I have a lot of things that I do during the day, right? Making games for me is a profession. That's what I see it as, not as a hobby. Well, I'm competing with hobbyists, right? That's what's very, very strange. So I don't know. Again, I don't want to go into ridiculously complex theories here. My point is simple. I don't think Steam is responsible for this. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Apple is responsible for this. And I don't think Google is responsible for this. Yeah. Because that would make every company responsible for everything, and it doesn't make any bloody sense. Yeah. Right? Something else going on.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, like when it comes to Steam being having Steam, let me see, Chris and chat being more of a ticket booth than a bouncer, like, it's one of those very weird situations, because you will have people who say that Steam should be controlling what's on their market. That Steam is like a Walmart or Target or anything like that. But like, we can certainly theorize how things would go the opposite direction if Steam really did crack down and say your video game must have this, this, and this. It can only be about these topics, and you will not be allowed in the store otherwise. And we could go in that other direction, and that could arguably be worse for a lot of people.
Well, I mean, every one person, bar none, that says Steam should have these restrictions, you will notice that whenever you quiz them about those restrictions, you will notice that they happen to meet them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So every one of these persons will say, I want Steam to limit everyone, asterisk, but me.
Yeah.
No, That's not a discussion that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I want to go back to a point you made earlier, because it's another one of those very polarizing topics when it comes to Steam and just being an independent developer. And that is that Steam should not be responsible for the success of your game. And that is definitely a topic that has spurred a lot of debate. And
Okay.
it's one of those things like the idealist in me thinks that yes, they should, but when I think about it more, like the realist slash pessimist thinks no. And it's again one of those things that it's very hard to really break down because we have seen, and I'm sure you as well, Mike, we have all seen amazing games that have done nothing. They could not make an inch on the Steam marketplace. And maybe with a little bit more of a push, things could have turned out differently for them. But then conversely, we've seen games that were horrible, bad, whatever, that, just by being on there or just, getting in touch with the right people, got a lot of press and managed to succeed. And again, I think, like you said, there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all, I think, solution for this problem.
That's true, but there are trends.
Yes.
For example, the having a publisher seems to, at this moment in time, be an objectively better situation than being alone. Anyway, you've said a few things. One thing you've said was the original question, whether Steam ought to be responsible for the success of the people on it. No. I mean, it's an insane proposition.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. What is, in your opinion, is some, I don't know, somebody, suppose that you're commercing in bananas and there's a store that sells bananas and you give them your bananas. Are they responsible for getting the bananas off the shelf for you to be successful? Absolutely not. No. They'll try as long as it's useful to them. When it isn't, they won't. Right? I mean, it's no, what? Anyway. So that's an absurd position to hold. The difficulty of being discovered and covered is the real problem, so to speak, that I think any of us can actually affect. And there are things that, as far as I can understand, can be done in order to improve your chances in that area. And having a publisher is one. Having connections is another one. Having a core audience is another one. And so on. I mean, I'm really not an expert at this area. In fact, everything I say should be taken with a massive pinch of salt because so far, everything I've done in this particular area has been a complete failure. So, I'm not talking self-disparagingly for sport. It's true. That's what happened. Right? So Thrusty Ship has been covered by, I believe, 2 outlets, perhaps. You are, I think, the biggest the second biggest YouTube channel that has talked about Thrusty Ship to any degree.
I'm moving up there, I guess, folks, for those of you watching this right now, because I remember when we were only like 500, 600 subscribers at one point. And yet, it's definitely hard. Like, again, like coverage these days is just a major part of it. But I want to go back to, again, what you said with regards to the problem when it comes to the stores being the people on there themselves. Again, with the sheer amount of low-quality games. They want to know, did PewDiePie cover a Thrusty Ship?
No.
Who is...
I never even contacted him. It was a waste of time to try. But that was my perception. But I have contacted, I don't know, north of 500 people is my guess. The coverage that I've got, I think, is south of 50. And all very small.
Okay. But back to the topic then, like, with regards to trying to find a solution, like, is there, like, have you done any, like, theory crafting on your end in terms of, like, how can, like, developers, like, how do you deal with crappy games or with the inflation when it comes to video games? Like, is there a way to deal with it?
I don't know, and I'm not sure there is. I repeat again, I don't think this problem is to any degree limited to video games. I think this problem extends to people having a lot of time on their hands. And life is very cheap nowadays, so it's very easy to stay above water I mean, most people live with their parents until they're like 42 or something. It's a crazy world. We live in a crazy world. I can tell you, the next generation is going to look very different. I don't know how different, but different. Because, I mean, the amount of children at the moment is ridiculously low, right? In the industrialized countries. I mean, well below reproduction rate. So, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's definitely been like, again, like we see the same thing all around with kind of the rise of the quote unquote internet celebrity, famous for being famous kind of situation. And again, it is a very strange time, I think, to say the least.
I can tell you I don't understand it, that's for sure. But I don't understand most things that are younger than the 80s. I don't understand automatic cars. I just don't understand. I don't get how this life is enjoyable. Like, we live in a time, right, where I stream my game development and there are people watching. I'm confused. You're watching me work.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I mean, bless you, thanks, I guess. But I mean, and I said this openly to my audience as well. We have a bit of a laugh with it, but I just don't understand anything of the modern world. I'm completely a man stuck in the wrong time capsule. I don't get it.
I may be there with you too. But for the people watching, you know what that means. Next stream is just going to be me typing about my book for like 3 hours. That's going to be the next stream.
Fact. Done.
Yeah. And it's always, like, I guess, another question for you then. Like, I assume, like, we've been talking a little bit in chat about kind of like Kickstarter and the rise of kind of crowdfunding. Like, what do you make of that, like, when it comes to game development? Because that's been another case that has allowed a lot of people to get the funding and access to game development that they probably wouldn't have otherwise gotten.
It's another absurd situation. You imagine me, okay, coming to you with an imaginary T-shirt and telling you, "Hey, Josh, I have an imaginary T-shirt right now. If you give me $12, I promise you, I'll get you a T-shirt in 2025. You cool?" Your default answer should be, "What are you on about, you lunatic?"
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, everybody is obviously on crowdfunding platforms pitching their product to loads of people for funding. I live in a reality in my brain, and that's very much my brain, where in order for me to earn people's money, I need to make something. It doesn't go the other way around. So, for example, I have on principle, and you will notice this is very much a pattern with me, principles. I have never taken funding from crowds, and I will never take funding from government. Because in case you don't know this is a fascinating little aspect of our industry. Government funding is starting to increase. So there's loads of game developers. I mean, you must have read about this. Recently, they're talking about unionizing.
Yeah.
Stay the heck away, right? So they're talking about unionizing. They want to unionize. They're demanding funds from government. You may remember the original indie games film or whatever it was, the one with Phil Fish and the one with what's his name, Macmillan, etc. Right? I mean, Jonathan Blow and Macmillan, at least, right, were both entrepreneurs. But Phil Fish, got like 65K from government, a 35K, I don't know, a substantial amount from government in grants. It's crowdfunding is just the same without government, essentially. It's everybody seems to have an infinite sea of money. That's the primary problem, as far as I can tell. So somebody comes and promises them Mega Man 12 or something, and they go, "Awesome, take my money. Here's the imaginary game. I'll give you money." So many of these stories, ukulele, I don't know. I mean, you name it, there is one. I don't understand any of this. But I don't want to be part of it. I can tell you that.
All right. And yeah, like, again, like, discussion about unions in the game industry, that's another, 2-hour conversation, I think, depending upon how far we get going with that. And it's again like a very tricky, I think, tightrope to walk when it comes to game development. Because one of the best things about being an independent developer has arguably been the fact that anybody can do it. Again, I've spoken to developers who basically, like, right out of college, decide, you know what, I want to try and make a game. Or a few people, like one of my friends was like, he was I think a business manager, or he was like a banker or something, and said one day, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go make video games for a living. And again, the beauty about that space, again, is that we have this wide berth. But on the other hand, though, it has created a situation where, again, everybody can make a video game. So you can
there's nothing wrong with everybody being able to make a video game. What's plenty wrong is that you make a video game that sucks. You hate it, your friends hate it, your mom hates it, your dad hates it, and you still sell it. That's the central problem, right? It's got nothing to do with the fact that everybody can make a car,
yeah,
right? It's gonna suck. That's the issue. Right? And this is what's happening with games. By the way, important thing, right? Because I find this very, very common with indie devs. For some reason, indie devs seem to think it clever to say that AAA games are boring or bad. And not just indie devs, people too. Right? This is absurd. The vast majority of people only play AAA games and nothing else. Us included, by the way. Right? It's how many AAA games do you play in a year versus how many indie games do you play in a year? Now you're very special because you cover them, right? Yeah. So it's part of your job to go sort of off the beaten track. But the vast majority of people are on the beaten track and firmly stay there. Right? I mean, the amount of people that play FIFA, the amount of people that the game FIFA makes richer and happier is astonishingly high. And I can tell you this, I mean, I can't tell you any figures, etc., not only because I don't know them, but also because even if I did, I would be barred from doing so. But I have experienced personally seeing how many people's lives are enriched by AAA games. AAA games are better than everybody else's. AAA games is like going to your local Toyota dealership and buying a Camry. Okay? Indie games are going to your local dealership and buying a used Honda Civic from the 1990s. That's the thing. So you're taking a massive gamble. It may be good, it may be bad. Who knows? Right? I mean, obviously it's more complicated than this, and this analogy doesn't do this justice. But the thing is, the indie world right now needs essentially two definitions. One is the junk, and one is the not junk. And who decides what these two things are at this very moment in history, as far as I can tell, is media. So, in other words, media decides who's successful and who isn't.
Yep. And that, of course, leads back into that discussion about the positive feedback loop when it comes to being successful in this industry. That the people who do get that media coverage, who do get that market access or that market growth, they continue, unless they do something completely, out of left field or brain dead stupid, continue to keep growing. Red Hook Games, they've done really well with the Darkest Dungeon. They recently announced Darkest Dungeon 2. And again, they're a great example of, that continued progress from pre-Kickstarter all the way to game release. But, like you said, for every Darkest Dungeon out there are probably thousands of more games that are released on a daily basis that nobody's ever going to play, that nobody will ever even heard of. And, like you said, and then from the flip side of that, we have the AAA game. When a Call of Duty is released, it's still going to pull in massive numbers. Even if everybody says they hate it or they're going to boycott it or anything like that, it's still going to do really well day one.
As it should, because it's a better game than most others. Yep. The fact that its design may be stale or whatever quip you may have with it, it's still the best possible game out there. It's very pretty, it's well executed. Largely, it's going to be clean of bugs compared to most indie titles. There's no question. That's a professionally made game.
Yeah. And I want to stay on that phrase for a second. Professionally made. I think that is one of the big points whenever we have these discussions. Because like you said, there are plenty of independent games out there that are being released. They may be artistic and creative and unique, but there's still not going to be that refined experience. And for many people, like myself, and for I'm sure a lot of people like in chat right now, we've come to accept that. I know if I buy a $5 indie game, it's not going to be professionally made at the same level as something like a Nintendo product or Blizzard or Activision or anything like that. But again, though, like you still have to understand, I think, for a lot of people that sometimes that high quality is enough of a sale for people. Because for the general consumer, how many general consumers are going to want to buy an untested game? Or a game that's going to crash the second you put it in? Probably not as many as those who are going to buy the next Pokemon game that was just announced today. Again, that game comes out day one, it's going to do well. Like, there's no doubt about it.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think you said it very well when you said people know what they're getting as soon as they look at the label, right? That brand, whatever it is, and they go, this is going to be good. Say, I was reading, I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Rose, but he's a bit of a personality in the GDC videos and stuff. He's a producer and publisher from the United Kingdom who's a bit famous for having been very successful with his game Downhill Bikers, something like that. I haven't played it, but it's got to do with bicycles going down a hill. At any rate, that was a very successful game. They made loads of money with it, and he's done a lot of videos explaining how they did so, which is to everyone's benefit, I suppose. Now, he, for example, sent 2, 3, 4 tweets or something about how Pokemon is boring because it's all the same. But that's not relevant. That's what people want, apparently, right? I mean, they make a Pokemon game, which is about basically collecting these little creatures until you've done your full collection and evolving them or whatever it is. I don't play Pokemon, I don't know. Or at least I don't know intimately. People want that. Okay, they make that game. People buy it. They get feedback. They make the next one. It's without changing that much. That's perfectly fine. There's I don't know, man. It's super complicated. It's a ridiculous equation. Talking about solutions is absurd. I don't even know where the problem is.
Yeah. And chat is bringing up a point. Draken mentioned, of course, Hollow Knight and Shovel Knight, and that's a very interesting situation there, because in those cases we have games from independent developers that really pushed things forward in terms of what it means to make an independent game. And like you were saying, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just comment that I haven't played either, so I'm going to be a bit weak in commenting on that. Please continue.
No problem. But what I was saying is that with these two games, like as you were saying earlier, the quote unquote indie and what that means has really become muddy by all these games being released. And again, there are some independent games that we could argue hit that level of professional quality. Again, stuff like Darkest Dungeon, like Hollow Knight would be a really great example of like the amount of work and polish that went into that game. But then on the other hand, we then put in games like again, I can't name, there's just too many of them on Steam right now who are occupying that same title. And like you said, it's all a matter of that branding and perception. If somebody goes to the store and they see Pokemon with the Nintendo label on it, they're going to buy it because either A, they really like Pokemon, or B, they trust Nintendo. If you
the same applies to Hollow Knight now.
Yep.
Right? You go to the store, you see Hollow Knight 2, you're going to buy it.
Yep. But if we saw like a similar game, Collect Monsters, done by Dinmendo, right next to it, would people be buying that for $60?
Most likely no. There's no question that the brand in and of itself is valuable, right? But the interesting thing is, how did the people that did Hollow Knight or Shovel Knight actually manage to break through? I frankly don't know. One thing I've observed is catering to under-catered market seems to be a thing. Now, for that, you need to focus your energy in market research and try to find where stuff is missing. I think, for example, Demon Souls did a big splash when it came
Oh
out because
yes.
almost all games that were coming out so far were like, hey, this is Fable. It's a game about going to a menu, setting your quest to whatever quest you see in the list, and then following the yellow sprite dust, and you're gonna get to the place where you need to be. And then you press the X button about 4 times, kill everything that's there, get the experience, and then follow the yellow brick road back home. And Demon Soul says, "Yeah, oh, you know all of that? Yeah, we're not
Yeah.
doing that, right?" And I think Demon Souls, Dark Souls, the entire Souls sort of category completely created or recreated a new genre, gave license to loads of people to go there. I think the revival of the roguelikes is directly tied to the success of From Software's
Oh
titles.
yeah.
Right? So this seems to be a thing that I'm entirely incapable of doing, by the way, as a dev, like finding some kind of new place that no one's gone to yet. And the other one, I mean, I'll go back to the same place. Somehow these people are capable of getting the buzz going.
Yep.
Somehow. I
And
don't know how.
And that right there, I think, is another really big point about game development and about understanding why something succeeds or fails. Because it's one of those things I think for a lot of people is like a big mystery. They'll look at a game like Hollow Knight, like Shovel Knight, or even something like Five Nights at Freddy's and go, what the hell? Why is that game doing well? And XYZ over here, barely anybody's touching. And there are a lot of things I think to unpack with that. Going back to your point about the media, like people know that I'm not a huge fan of kind of quote unquote games journalism these days. I feel that in many ways it's more sensationalized than it is like educational or helpful for a lot of people wanting to understand this industry.
Oh, you mean you don't like the people that will claim to you to your face that Gone Home is a more valuable product than GTA 5? Yeah, I don't like them either. A game that you can play for 700 bazillion hours while having fun every single one of them versus a game that can be finished in 42 minutes. Yes, it's incredible. But you need to somehow ingratiate these people, or some of these people somehow. The theory that I formed inside my head is A, form a core audience. B, of evangelizers, right? People that go out and preach your stuff. B, have them help you get through to more established media. I have failed at step 1. Step 2 never followed. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, perhaps my theory is wrong, but this is my theory so far, and it's the one that I intend to follow for now. The core audience assembly or putting together is what I'm trying to do with my Twitch streaming, but I suspect there I'm reaching out to the wrong people. I'm actually reaching out to devs. And I've found, to my surprise, many devs being very, very supportive, and also many devs instead sort of being there and then going away after whatever 10 days that they have been very active or something. It's very interesting, actually. My Twitch situation is very interesting. I've got like almost 600 followers now. Of those active, I would say are 10. And I keep on getting these odd sort of replacement waves, with 10 seems to be sort of the general number. And think about it. If even a tenth of these people had purchased my game, right, I would be, who knows, I may have more reviews on Steam, etc., etc., but this hasn't happened. So I have completely missed the whole core audience, and I think I'm fishing in the wrong pond. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and like I mean, the whole Twitch, YouTube, live stream or streaming culture. I mean, that's another one of those old man yells at cloud situations for myself too. And yes, I stream every day. I mean, not only this one, I'm going to do a game stream later tonight, and I would like to think that I have found or I'm growing that core audience. A lot of the people on chat right now are most of my regulars that come out for the regular streaming. They talk. And I mean, the channel itself has just hit over 4,000 subs last week. So I know that what I'm doing is right. But again, But again, it's very hard, I think, to know, like, why these things are working. Like, I have a few friends who are constantly, giving me advice about, what to do with YouTube, how to, game or play the YouTube algorithm. And it's very hard, I think, sometimes to understand, like, how so many of these factors that can be completely out of your control can come back to bite you. And I'm sure the same thing is on Twitch. Like, I was on Twitch for about 2 years, and I just thought to myself, like, I don't want to be, like, on stream 68 hours a day. Like, even doing like a 3 to 4 hour stream daily starts to push my limits. Like, there's other things I want to get done, but it's that weird thing. Like, one day somebody could, what's that phrase they use? They share your stream or they host your stream, and that could blow you up into, massive success. But
absolutely, I got hosted by Jonathan Blow once.
Mm-hmm.
That landed me 10% of his audience as followers.
Yeah.
Not that I've seen them again, I don't think, but it's yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. But yeah, it's that crazy situation. But again, it's the same thing with game development. It's the same thing with YouTube. It can be almost like winning a lottery sometimes, and a lot of people don't understand just what it means, I think, to get that success, because there is no easy success in any of this. Everybody watching this, and I'm sure yourself will agree with that. Like, you can't just one day sit and go, I'm going to make a video game, or I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and in 1 month you're now, rich and famous on the platform.
Yeah, no, that doesn't happen. I mean, it may, perhaps, but that's not the model that you should base your expectations on. It's just an outlier. Right, so, but I don't know. Really don't know. I mean, I didn't come to this interview expecting solutions, but the interesting and proactive questions that you've sort of put forward, in my opinion, seem to have these ready-made answers that I read either on Twitter or around, where everybody seems to think that some form of government, whether it be Valve or Kickstarter, it doesn't matter. Everybody needs to solve their problem for themselves. For them. So there's a lot of complaints and suggestions of solutions, but I don't know that I don't know. I just don't understand anything. And if you watch GDC talks, as I do regularly, to try and understand where stuff is going and how it works, even the experts, take them 1 year ago, yeah, they're going to say A. Take them now, they're going to say B. They're not wrong. They're right both times.
Yeah.
It's just that the thing is, the world changes dramatically, very quickly. And, I mean, I don't understand what the magical way of becoming essentially famous, which is what you need in order for your products to be, to have a following that... essentially your clientele, right? I don't know how you do that.
Yep. And I don't know either. I would like to know that one myself there. But yeah, it's like you just said, when it comes to GDC, like, we saw the same thing when it came to the mobile market. That for a few years, mobile was considered to be, the next step for video games. It's going to be where everybody can go.
Yeah.
And things have certainly gone a different direction there.
Yeah. Yes, they have. Welcome to the junkyard. How are you?
Mm-hmm.
Hope you have a great day. Yeah, the mobile. I mean, for example, I used to be a fan of. I played mobile games extremely little. It's just not my thing. Mm-hmm. But there was a game I used to play called Jetpack Joyride. Mm-hmm. I remember. I really liked that game. I thought it was cute. I thought it was simple. I thought it was intelligent. I enjoyed it. Right? I installed it recently. They blasted me with an ad immediately after I finished my first run. Uninstalled it. I'll never touch this again. I mean, now the people on mobile, to try and make any degree of money, let alone profit, need to do the most unethical things you can possibly imagine. Like, hey, here's my game. By the way, in order for you not to be annoyed by me, you need to pay me money. That's genius. I love it. But there's no other way, because there's like 7 bazillion games. All of them are worth nothing. Your time as a user is way more valuable than any money that you would spend on any of these products.
Mm-hmm.
And developers are one-upping each other, going like, "Oh, mine is free. No, mine is freer. I'm gonna gift you a car if you play my game or something." It's just, I'm not. This is all wrong. All of this is wrong, and people who play this game as developers certainly can't come whining when they sleep in the bed that they've made for themselves.
Mm. Yeah. Now, another big thing, again, with regards to all these stores I wanted to touch on with you is obviously the Epic Game Store. Even stuff like Discord, and we already mentioned itch.io earlier. Like, do you think having these multiple stores will do anything for this kind of issue?
No. Eventually, the same problem will present itself. I mean, they have a completely different approach. For all of those who think that you can just contact Epic and they'll put you on the store, I hate to burst your bubble, it's not the way it works. Both they and Discord handpick who they put in their store. Which means they're just going to grab all of the big ones that are already out there and put them. So all they are doing, as far as I can understand now, is they're trying to get a slice of the beautiful publishing costs pie that Steam has been enjoying, right? Steam takes a 30% cut, they'll take a 10% cut, whatever the cut is, it doesn't matter, it's a free cut. Because practically speaking, they end up presenting you with exactly the same games that you see on the storefront of Steam anyway. So, at least for now. Maybe later this will be different, but I don't know how this will help or not help or anything like that. What, are we going to start having exclusives? Like, for example, Epic Game Store exclusive. Like the Origin exclusive games, right?
Yep.
Say, if you want to buy FIFA, sorry, it's not on Steam, right? I mean, it's very obvious that EA wouldn't want to go on Steam considering how much Steam takes, right? And they're big enough that they can do their own platform. But then again, then you got Uplay, etc., etc. How many clients do you expect me to have on my PC to play your stupid games? So I'm not really sure how this is going to work. I have no idea, but I can't possibly imagine it being earth-shattering. I think it's going to shift things in some directions that I can't foresee.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's still very early in this year too. Like, we really haven't seen like what Epic is going to do. We've seen them push things, but like you said, it can also just go like they'll just become Steam 2.0. Or maybe just Steam like 1.5, depending upon what they're going to do. And I mean, we saw the same thing happen with Nintendo Switch, and how everybody rushed to it when people say, "Oh, it's going to be a great indie spot," but now all the indies are on there, and we have a flooded market.
All right, which keeps reinforcing my point that I was trying to make, that very evidently it's not a problem of distribution. It's not like if we keep on saying that Steam is the problem or Switch is the problem, or how many problems do you suddenly have that are all identical? Clearly, that's not the issue. The issue is somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Quantity of rubbish is the issue. For instance, I think Steam is using the review system with thumbs up and thumbs down. It's got the overwhelmingly positive, the negative buttons, etc. It also has the feature that if you've received a copy for free, it will force you to mention it, right? So it's got quite a lot of clever little things that are helping games stay down when they deserve to be down. Mm-hmm. But obviously all of these systems can be abused. You have seen all of the activism, right, with people deliberately going and thumbing things down or deliberately going and thumbing things up, etc. It's chaos. Yeah. I really have no idea how anybody goes about doing anything in this area. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it's just a very like weird situation for everyone, because we're even seeing like established developers who are having trouble getting their games out there. And for a lot of people, thank you, Chris, but for a lot of people, that it gets to that point of like, even if somebody does everything right, has a popular following, they can still end up failing. And that is scary for a lot of developers.
Yes. I mean, say for example, what I've been doing as a dev. So one part of the story that I kind of didn't mention is that I am ridiculously good at saving money. So I have sufficient money that if I don't make a single penny for the next 20 years, I think I can still live and cure my cancer. Right? So, which will inevitably hit at some point. Right? That's because all of my time working AAA and doing all of the overtime and everything like that and promotions, etc., I've set aside. So the way I approach the indie development thing is that I spend stupidly little, very little money, a ton of my time. Right? Mm-hmm. So Thrusty Ship, for example, took me about 6 months of probably more than double shifts. But in terms of costs, I must have spent less than 2,000 American dollars on it. Mm-hmm. Right? So I mitigate the problem of what if I fail by not spending 60 grand on a game. Obviously, if I spent 60 grand on a game, my game would look very pretty. My game would sound much better. And all of these things. That's not how I do my development. And because of this sort of, let's call it fiscal conservatism, I have no trouble staying afloat, but I have an enormous amount of trouble making anything noteworthy as well. So I suppose it's not a great plan, but it is a plan that allows me to keep doing what I want to do. And it comes with the added benefit that I make no money, therefore I owe nothing in taxes, which makes me feel all fuzzy inside. My Canadian government gets nothing from me. Lol.
Yeah, and like being able to, like you said, like for a lot of people, they look at things the opposite way, that they're going to put everything they have into a single game. And like we've seen, it can pay off, but it's just like the lottery. It can also fail spectacularly as well.
Right. I mean, the more you invest, the more your failure is going to hurt. Mm-hmm. It's fairly obvious, right? But I mean, one thing that I have a strong feeling many people don't know. If you worked in AAA, etc., one thing that you'll learn very quickly is how many ideas and concepts in games that technically exist-ish never make it to market. Mm-hmm. It's a huge amount. Yeah. I don't remember the percentage, but plus it would be absurd to talk about percentages because it changes yearly, blah 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 blah. Right? But it's a huge amount of projects and ideas and prototypes that get put forward and never see the light of day, promising or otherwise. It doesn't matter. Right? I mean, anybody who's worked for bigger projects and bigger companies will know how deeply a game changes, depending on all sorts of stuff. I mean, again, NDA forbids me from talking about it, but there are some anecdotes that are hilarious. I guess I can remove all names and all references, but there was a bug in a database once that said, our CEO could not find the secret door. Following day, secret door removed, the entire level redesigned. This type of stuff, like, happens all the time, and it's crazy. Like, failures are omnipresent in the industry, just like I assume in almost every industry. But if you invest a lot of money up front and it goes poorly, oh my word, will you suffer. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's something that I'm not willing to do, right? As a family man, I am not willing to go bankrupt or anything like that. So I'm basically super conservative and hoping that somebody will pick up my game and go like, hey, this is actually pretty fun. And they'll play it and they'll recommend it to their friends. Mm-hmm. I mean, just thanks to your stream, I think I sold 2 copies.
And again, you never know where things are going to come from like that. I mean, again, a lot of my success has been just reaching out to people, having them find me. But it can still be very hard because you're, again, relying on this random factor. And for a lot of people, they're fine with doing that. But like you and I both know, and I'm sure everybody watching this, if you're going to bet your house on some lucky person finding your game and putting it from a PewDiePie or someone like that, that's not how you really build a business model.
I suppose. Mm-hmm. I really couldn't say. I've never met anyone who has ever counseled me on how you build a business model. Yep. And all of the people that I've talked to that are in the business of making video games, are either so established that they forgot their roots, or they are. Say, for instance, I was streaming one time, and this guy from a famous game which I did not know popped into my stream. So the game is really, really famous. It was a sensation. I don't know what it's called. Something like "Don't play that game," something like this. I'm sorry, I can't remember the title. At any rate, this guy starts giving me all sorts of suggestions about what to do. And I say, interesting, because I'm doing exactly the things you suggested. And he says, yeah, carry on, it's going to work. Well, I carried on. It did not work. Right? So, for example, reaching out to people on Twitter, etc. The thing that surprised me the most was the quantity of silent rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? It was incredible. Like, absolute zero feedback. I have no idea if I'm doing something wrong, Did I end up in the bin? I have no clue whatsoever. The only success I've had was going to streamers, individual streamers, talking to them and saying, hey, I'm an indie dev. Would you like to try this? And I can tell you that it was fairly successful. My game has play tested fairly well. The one thing that it's play tested very poorly at, as far as I can tell, is returns. Right? So I have no idea whether people return to the game. But every streamer who's played the game has played far past the point that they said they would stop, yourself included.
Yep.
Right? Because I recall I was watching you and you said, oh yeah, we're going to move on in 10 minutes, 1 hour later. Right? So I think my game is pretty decent, but I can't get anyone to play it. And plus, it's designed for an audience of hardcore gamers. I don't know where these people live, but I can't find them.
Yep. And it's very... I'm like the same way with that. Like, I'm trying to reach out to more people about game wisdom and stuff like that. But it's one of those things, I think, for a lot of people that it becomes like an all-consuming task. Do I work on my stuff for a living? Or do I spend the next 8 hours on Reddit and on Facebook groups and on Twitter, chasing after these, mythical fans who are going to hopefully support my game?
Yeah, same here. So do I code or do I do this? I remember, for example, one time I went to one of those Discord groups and I said, hey guys, I'm releasing my game in a week. Who, in your opinion, should I contact to help me market the game? And I mean, the responses that I got from the devs were like, lol, you're about 6 months too late, buy a time machine, whatever it is. It's like, yeah, I understand. That's fantastic. Thanks for the suggestion. I give up, right? I simply said, yeah, sure, I'm not dealing with this. It's basically, what do you think? I have a group of PR people that do it for me? Do you think I have anything like that? That's not there. I need to do all of the work myself. So the question is, do I make 70 levels and do the marketing, which, by the way, I hate the living bejesus out of. Right? I can't stand having to go out and peddle my stuff to others. It's just not what I do. It's not my skill set, right?
Yep.
Okay, then you may say, okay, then hire someone. Yeah, slow down, Flower. Hiring people is extremely expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Hiring one man is going to tank your company in 1 year if things go poorly.
Yep. I'm not going to name names, but I spoke to someone who does PR. He's a friend of mine. I asked him, what would be your friend price to work with me? He said it's going to be about like $350 to $400 a month. I'm like, yeah, I can't afford that. And it's not, it's not fair for him to try and lower his price because that's what he gets. But
Yep.
I can't, pay that amount of money.
Yep. It's this is the situation, and that's how we live. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep. From chat, AccuDocs was talking about Dwarf Fortress, and I don't know. I think Dwarf Fortress, is the example of how not to budget a video game despite its success. But I guess, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have never played Dwarf Fortress, so I cannot comment. I'm sorry, there's so many games I haven't played because I'm so busy working.
Yeah.
So I really don't know.
Yeah. I've been using the streams as kind of like my excuse to play the games that are in my backlog now because I don't have the time during the day to play games while I'm typing and doing other stuff.
Yeah, well, I know. But there's basically there's a bit of a fallacy there. We're all focusing on the success stories. There's many success stories, and they all have different colors and stuff like that. I really don't know how you get there, right? If I did, I would be there. Quite a lot, by the way, is at least partially down to luck.
Yep.
Right? So, and this isn't an excuse, right? I'm not trying to sort of make myself feel better. I don't do that sort of stuff. But it's, yeah, I don't. You need to invest a lot of money. If you invest a lot of money, you lose it all. You're done, right? This is the kind of risk I can't take. Awesome. I'll keep it small and tight and try to make friends as I go along the way. And perhaps these friends are eventually going to help me promote the stuff I do. And then who knows, maybe Thrusty Ship one day will have a tail. I don't know.
But yeah, like you said, when it comes to the idea of following only the successes, this again goes back to one of the things I don't like about game journalism and a lot of major sites, is that they only talk about the successes. They're going to pull up, every time, they pulled up, Red Dead Redemption numbers, like Kingdom Hearts number, Resident Evil. And yeah, those are great games. They certainly earn their money back and then some. But for every one of those stories, there's at least 100 plus of developers who didn't succeed. And I'm a firm believer that you learn more in failure than you do from success.
I'm not sure this is the case. I mean, it would be a case normally. I am a firm believer of that as well, when I can see my failure. You are now in a situation where you are, let's make an analogy here. You need to imagine yourself as a person who is trying to make it not necessarily big, but small, right? To any degree, pretty much walking in the dark without any source of light. And at some point you slam your face into something. All you've learned is that about in that area, there's something bad that you're going to slam your face into it, maybe. But you can't orient yourself. You don't know anything. You don't know stuff that's around you, above you, underneath you, etc. You're completely blind. And that's what I meant, right? I said, okay, hello media, I am this guy. I have made this game. I literally went to people with like less than 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and still got ignored. First, I targeted people that I thought may like my game, and I was fairly successful in that, say 50%, but it was extremely laborious, right? I needed to spend my entire day going to streamers, trying to find sort of an point where I can go like, hey, by the way, I'm a dev. How about you check this out, etc. The Steam curation system, right? Steam allows you to send your stuff to curators. 2 curators checked out my game out of 70. 2, right? But Jim Sterling will spend 2 years of his life pooping on a game called Slaughtering Grounds, right? Which isn't even on Steam anymore. And I have no idea how many copies of Slaughtering Grounds they must have sold, but even just for a lark, it must have been a few.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. I mean, how do you become successful? By making a terrible game like Slaughtering Grounds? I don't know.
And again, going back to the whole success thing and how a lot of people don't understand, step one in the process. Of course, when it comes to the Twitch and YouTube market, how many YouTubers and streamers, day one streamed Subnautica, or even something like Apex Legends from a few weeks ago, and that, or even Fortnite earlier than that. It's like that case where by the time you find out about a game like this, it's already famous. So what kind of lesson do you learn, about how Fortnite blew up? Or
then you must market early.
Yep.
Even though I hate marketing early or late.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure. Sorry, go ahead, read the chat, yeah.
No, they're talking about one of the more infamously bad games of 2017. It was Make Life a Black Tie, or some very low budget game that was released on PSN there.
I saw some footage of that, and that's a perfect example of Mr. Developer, sir. What are you doing? Because what you need to do right now is keep training like a maniac and keep washing dishes to earn your money. That's what you need to do. You need to find a blue-collar job, okay, that will allow you to get some money to then get and keep getting better. That's how I did it, I was working at work and training at home every night. It's really weird when you leave AAA and you have worked in all sorts of like different roles, including management, all sorts of stuff that's completely unrelated to coding, right? But you have been capable of learning how to code. Well, that's because you sat at home every day after hours, learning how to do it. I didn't start putting all of my little terrible projects on Steam or Itch or Game Jolt or anywhere else. So... But yeah, people are different. People keep on doing this. And then you have the success stories like Flappy Bird. Flappy Bird was really successful. It was the equivalent of one of these people I just described.
Yep.
Ended up, I think, with the guy pulling out of the market because he was too frightened of the success, which was fascinating.
Yeah, we've seen cases like that where a developer gets that big hit and then becomes, now what do I do? And
yeah.
I think it goes back to kind of like a major topic. I know this is something that I talk with Shark about. And that difference, as we all see, between going from being a hobbyist to somebody doing this full time. When you're just sitting in your room, throwing whatever prototype you have up on Itch or on Steam, who gives a crap if it does well or not? You can, release, who knows, maybe like a dozen little tiny games a month if you're just like throwing whatever you have out there. But what happens when you get that big hit? What happens when your game becomes the next Five Nights at Freddy's, or Outlast, or Stardew Valley? Then what do you do? And it's like, it sounds like I think from the outside, it sounds like the lottery dilemma. You win the lottery. Are you sad now? What are you going to do with that money? But it can be very freezing or very hard for somebody to kind of think about, what do I do now? Like, can I even keep doing this?
I don't know. It's a problem I'll tell you about when I have it. Most likely I would start buying vintage cars and probably put them in a garage somewhere as investments. That's what I would do.
All right. Let me see. Time-wise, we've been going for just about an hour and 20. And like I said before, like, these casts can just keep on going if we want to sit here and chat. I do want to spend some time talking a little bit about Thrusty Ship, and then we'll see how things go. Like I said, I do have a game stream probably later tonight. We'll probably be pushed back at the rate we're going, but we'll see how things develop. But I guess with Thrusty Ship then, like, you say you spent, what, like 6 months on it?
About, yeah. I mean, if you count now post-release.
Okay.
Pre-release, I would say it's between 4 and 5. I wasn't very good at keeping track.
Okay. So I guess, where did the original concept for it come from? I know you mentioned earlier that you were describing it as a platform.
Well, the original concept didn't come from me. That's the fascinating thing. So I was streaming on Twitch, developing games, developing prototypes that are sort of were interesting to me. And at some point, this fellow joins the stream, starts talking to me, etc. We become acquaintances, and he decides he wants to be my moderator on Twitch. I say, sure, whatever. I didn't even know what that meant, technically. I still don't, practically speaking. So at any rate, he becomes a moderator, and he tells me, I'm making this game. It's called Thrusty Ship, he says. And I say, okay. Feel free to share it. I say, so he shows me a prototype of it, and I see the prototype. I go like, okay, sure. I mean, I can see this. I immediately tell him, I'm not sure where you can take this, because I'm very honest in my feedback every time. I think that dishonest feedback for indie devs is the stupidest thing you could possibly do. It's actually damaging, but at any rate, to carry on. So he says, yeah, I'm planning on releasing it in 2 weeks, at which point I have an immediate gag reflex, so going, what? Right? Because he had nothing ready, right? Nothing was there. There was no game, there was no levels, there was nothing. It was clearly a level-based game, and there were no levels. So we're friendly, and at some point I go like, are you sure you don't need help? Because, you look like you're, you said you're releasing on Tuesday, whatever the day was, right? Are you sure you're ready? He says, I got it. I said, okay. Then later he starts coming to me with specific questions, like, how do you code this? How do you code that? And I start answering. Eventually it happens that I spend 2 days 16 hours on each day dictating code to this individual. I literally sort of speak the code into the microphone and he types it down. Okay, and I start going like, okay, this is really inefficient. Plus, it's taking a lot of my time. And I started going like, listen, wouldn't it be best if we start working this together and crunch it all the way till the end until it would release? And this must have been like 5 days before release, before his theoretical release, which was back in September. And he says yes. And okay, so I start coding like a maniac. He was supposed to be in charge of marketing and other things, etc., etc. And now, obviously, you only have my side of the story, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. At any rate, the game starts taking shape. We start discovering how the levels can behave and the possibilities. For example, all of those scenarios when you can stick the nose of the ship into a hole to grab something and then come out, etc. Those concepts hadn't yet been invented because the levels weren't there. Nobody knew. And so we discovered these interesting things and these interesting gameplay possibilities. We tried talking to the artist who was a volunteer friend of this guy's. And he says, I don't want to modify any of the ships. And he quits, like immediately. And I'm like, okay, we got no art now. this is a problem 2 days before release. Right, so I say, we need to delay. This guy agrees with delaying. I hire an artist, blah, 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 blah. The game starts now taking proper shape. It's becoming much more interesting, much better done, etc. Now, eventually, this guy, for some reason, this original founder, starts becoming upset with me. To this day, I'm not sure why. And he decides to quit. And I say, okay, but I have invested too much of my time to give up on the product now. And he says, okay, I'll give you it for free. And I said, no, that's not a fair deal. That doesn't make any sense. I'll buy it off of you. See how good of a negotiator I am? Principles are more important to me than money. But at any rate, what happens is that then later he comes back to me with a figure. He wants a certain amount of money. I'm not going to go into detail as to what that amount of money is, but I'm going to say I found that amount of money completely ludicrously high. And I said, there's no way this game is making back that money. I don't think it's going to make back that money. I very much doubt it, especially because I'm going in alone now. Right? Nobody's going to do any marketing. Nobody's going to help me. It's going to be just me. And we argue for a bit. He gets upset again, and he agrees. Well, he proposes that I buy the game off of him for a ludicrously low amount of money now. Like something so stupidly low it doesn't make any sense. I lost my patience. I said, sure. I go to my lawyer. I draft a contract. We sign the contract. We witness the contract. Where he cedes all property of the product to me. So I now own the product. Later, he refuses to take my money because he refuses to send me a invoice. Now, fortunately, I've put all of this down in paper. The lesson for all of the budding developers in the audience is this. Put it down on paper, please. It doesn't matter if you're friends with people. Put it down on paper. It's going to hurt you like heck if you don't. Right? So put it down on paper. Now, I have the product. It must be late October. I am through with like 2/3 of the levels, most of the mechanics. And now it's just crunching on the levels, finishing the game, polishing it up, and reaching out to people. And that's what I keep on doing until the game is ready. But technically speaking, the original idea wasn't mine. And how did the game develop itself? Over time. In the sense that the game expressed itself to me, not vice versa. So all of the mechanics that you saw, I deduced them as possibilities from the game. So as I was designing things, this went, oh, look, you can do that. That's brilliant. Let's do that, right? And so I would keep on adding features as much as I wanted to. I think you have barely encountered the lasers now, but there's 4 types. I think you've only encountered 1, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And the no gravity zones, the doors and how they kill you, which you haven't seen yet, the ships and how they behave, the special abilities, the emergency burst, all of these concepts have emergently developed themselves from the game. I had lots of inspiration from my favorite games, which are The Binding of Isaac and Rocket League. And you can clearly see or feel the Rocket League in there, in my opinion, considering how you need to consistently manage your fuel and all of that.
Man, it's definitely one of those stories there, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's again, it's like one of those very weird things. And as the chat is saying, and I know as I've said this for a long time. Again, it's very easy at the start for everything to be all friendly, hunky dory. Everybody's the best friend. But the second that money starts to come into things, you need to protect not only yourself but everybody involved in the project as well. And like for a lot of first-time developers, they don't see things along those lines. They see we're best friends day one. We're going to end things as best friends.
Doesn't work that way. It really does not. In fact, by now, I'm almost convinced my failures with teammates, and similar are entirely down to me. I haven't yet figured out what it is that I do wrong, but I'm sure it's a statistical impossibility that it's them. I have failed with every single teammate I have ever tried. So I work alone, or as alone as possible. Geodesic Racing loves me. That's true. I sponsor them, which is a fascinating story. That too. I don't know if that's something you want to hear, Josh, but the long story short is this: an Australian guy by the name of Dan, popped in on my stream once, and he was interested in my political opinions, I suspect. And he decided that he liked me, so he asked me if I would sponsor their iRacing team. And I said, but I don't have money to give you. They said, that's fine. So now my company's name is on their cars, and nobody knows why. At least I'm not sure. But I think they think I'm a good guy and I'm going to go places. Bless them. I'm very thankful that's what they think, but I don't think there's much evidence to reinforce this.
Do we have anyone in chat who works at NASCAR who would like to sponsor Game Wisdom? And, can I throw you a Game Wisdom loan you put on a NASCAR somewhere?
Yeah, you can try that. Let's see if that works. Did you have any more specific questions about Thrusty Ship? Maybe its design or anything like that? Because its inception story is so weird, but the rest is more logical.
Mm-hmm. There we go. I'm just reading chat there. But yeah, looking at the design of the game, you can really see how things evolve from World 1 to World 3 like that. And I guess from how you designed it, how did you figure out what mechanics you wanted to put in there? You said it was more of an iterative process, and which ones that just didn't work for you? What was kind of your, I guess, threshold for design?
The vast majority of the things I attempted worked. Not only did they work, but they worked fantastically well. There were a few things that didn't work. Like, for example, my junk originally had some kind of HP system, so you could sort of grind it to destroy it eventually, or, bump it. Then I decided to change it into essentially a gate mechanic, or yes-no mechanic. You have sufficient speed and force to break them, okay, then you will. Otherwise, no, you won't. Absolutely every mechanic that is in that game that has been designed was essentially a fruit of my imagination that came a little bit emergently from the game, plus ideas that I had. As I tried to implement it, it worked immediately, and it was successful. It made the game better. The only pain that I had was designing the levels around them, especially towards the end. The later levels use all of the mechanics all at the same time, and the game has tons of mechanics. The vast majority of platformer games have 3 or 4, right? Beside locomotion, right? Mine has, I don't know, 20. So it becomes very complicated to find the synergies between all of them.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm actually, my second book that I was talking to you about before the stream, it's about all the history and design of platformers. And yeah, most platformers, they will get done the majority of their mechanics very early on, and then it's just a matter of shuffling them around or figuring out, easy, medium, and hard challenges. But you rarely see a platformer that, again, hits you with 15, 20 different rules and elements all going at the same time. And for very obvious reasons. How do you fit all that into a single level, or into even a set of levels, without it being just a complicated mess? I'm sure Super Mario Maker, right? By now you've heard of it, you know what that game is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there are just some insane levels people have put out that it's just, here's 50 ideas, do it all in 2 minutes, and, end level, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not a scrub. I've seen a lot of level design before, and so it wasn't that difficult. I'm not a level designer though, so that was quite an interesting learning experience for me. I don't know, man. There's a lot of challenges in there. For example, I am an abnormally good gamer for a programmer. The vast majority of programmers or just generally developers that I have met are very intelligent and capable people, but not necessarily particularly good gamers. This is actually a really interesting thing. It makes sense because they spend a lot more time making things than they spend playing them, really, right? And because I was in QA and similar things, I have a lot of skill in that area. And it was quite interesting to see my own skill increase as I play Thrusty Ship, and that enabled me to do harder and harder and harder levels. In fact, many of my audience would go like, dude, this is becoming too hard. Like, only you can do this. And I said, yeah, but I'm nowhere near the best player in the world. There will be people that are better than me. So I am, I'm working towards them, etc. So Thrusty Ship is a game that is trying to cater to a casual audience by having a fairly easy set of mechanics to learn. Right? The beginning levels are all easily perfectible, etc. Those are all tutorial levels. They're all designed to teach you how to play and give you a feel for the controls. Because almost everyone, as soon as they pick it up, they go like, whoa, this goes a lot faster than I expected. Or, whoa, I'm bouncing all over the place. Yeah, that's what the first levels are for. And then as you improve, you'll see perfection becomes almost unattainable very quickly. Like 10, 20 levels in, all of a sudden you can't perfect a single level.
Yeah.
Right? You need a little bit of practice, right? Later, passing levels starts becoming challenging. Okay, so I have a few. So you've only just reached World 3. World 3 is the real game, so to speak, right? And in World 3, there's a level with something like, it's called the Land of Murdor, I think, and it's got something like, I think, 3 or 4 door traps. Now, what door traps are switches in the middle of the level and doors placed on one side and then the opposite side of the level. And these doors travel like bullets, and the doors will kill you. So when you press that switch, you need to be aware of where the door is going to be and when the door is going to go. If you don't pay attention to that while you're fighting gravity, while you're paying attention to lasers that are made of fire that will set you on fire around you, etc., it becomes a little bit more like the difficult levels in Mario Maker. So even just getting through is a massive satisfaction. The fastest playthrough that I've seen is 15 hours by a streamer. And I mean, he was swearing down the alleys by the end of the game. It's a rage-inducing game. It's a tough game, but it doesn't present itself under that guise. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, loads of levels. It was very, very difficult to make the last ones. Fun as heck, though. Very satisfying to both play them and make them, tweak them. It's brilliant. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I tend to ramble, so you got to stop me.
There's a lot of thoughts going around my head right now as you were talking about that, and what you were just saying with regards to being great at your own game. That's a very interesting point. I mean, we had another hour and a half, 2 hours. I would like to delve more closely into that, but it is a very interesting point for a lot of game developers, because we see this in a lot of AAA games, that the developer will release a game, and probably most players will finish it within a day. There was a joke on The Simpsons that they made about Bart being a game in 20 minutes. The guy's like, "But I just spent 6 years of my life, and I lost 3 wives while making this game." Well, your game's too easy, and it's that very weird kind of sentiment that you always have to balance in terms of that kind of design, at least for most games, about appealing to such a wide margin. And we actually had a discussion last night while in Crazin's we were playing the original Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and we were having this whole discussion about how do you present a game with depth to somebody that you know when they get to, the real Dark Souls experience, however you want to describe it, that's going to kick their butt. But you can't start off with that because you're going to knock people away.
You must prepare them. That's what I think there's at least two schools of thought. One school of thought is suck it up, Buttercup. You either do it or you die. That's a very, very clever trick. This is kind of what Super Meat Boy could be argued did, even though it's not true because Super Meat Boy does prepare you, right? But the point is, it's still, it's very harsh right away, right? Demon Souls kills you immediately. Dark Souls puts you in the asylum. And you have the first boss right away. Yeah. It's like, it's massive, right? So that's one school of thought, I would argue. The other school of thought, which is perhaps a little bit more considerate of the player, is the one that I approached, the approach that I took, which is create levels initially that are designed to teach you. However, make absolutely sure they don't look that way. They don't make them into an official tutorial. Make them into a game. So, for instance, other than having some messages that appear on screen that give you suggestions, I let you fail as much as you want. I let you succeed as much as you want. I let you breeze through as much as you want, or stop. So all of that. And my entirety of the first world is designed for you to learn the mechanics and sort of learn how to play. The second world is, okay, start getting good. And the third world is like, okay, you must be good to do this. You also probably noticed the fact that my EXP mechanic for unlocking levels sometimes forces you to play older levels. Right? That was a controversial thing. Because if you do not perform well enough in the previous levels, chances are you're not ready. So I'm trying to send you subtle messages that you should probably go back to previous levels and perfect them. See how that's done, and so on. So that was my approach. My approach was to ease you into the difficulty.
Yep. And it's what I like to call organic level design, organic tutorial design. As Draken's saying in chat, people love learning but hate being taught. And that is certainly true when it comes to game design and level design. Like you said, you could have made 10 quote-unquote tutorial levels. Press up to shoot the rocket up. Dodge this. And people will probably get bored out of their mind and go, this is what this game is about? Screw this, I'm going to go play something a little bit more challenging. Of course, given the obvious fact that in 2 worlds from now, they probably won't even be able to get through most of those levels. But how you present it to the player is such an important aspect of it. And the best games do go for that kind of organic growth. That it doesn't hit you right away with the difficulty, but at the same time, it doesn't just go, hold your hand and say, okay, can you press X? You can jump. Good for you. Move forward. Yay, you can do that. And that's 10 minutes of gameplay.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really sure that turns people off so much. I mean, I'm sure it turns some people off, but I don't think it's a huge amount. I think people are louder than they are. Making tutorials, generally speaking, by being in UX, one thing that you learn in UX research, one thing that you learn is that everyone hates them, as Draken's saying. However,
they still need them.
What people don't examine is the negative space. They never examine negative space. The vast majority of people are, myself included really, we are kind of simpletons, right? So we see a certain thing and we go, we rage at that particular thing, right? But we don't really understand why that thing is there, right? So the reason why that tutorial is there is so that next time you won't rage at this other thing, which instead would be impossible for you because you've never seen the tutorial, right? Or you were never forced through that path. So generally speaking, I think that the problem with the tutorialization, or the game being too easy, so to speak, isn't so much the tutorialization being very extended and stupid. It's more like the game per se has so little to offer when it comes to challenges that's not what you're in for when you play it. Say, take any JRPG. Like most JRPGs, there's no challenge whatsoever. It's literally press X on the attack button, and every now and then you need to do the super or whatever it's called. Right? I mean, I used to play JRPGs when I was younger a lot. I'm a huge fan of Suikoden's and the old Final Fantasies, certainly not the new ones, and so on. But you can like the gameplay there. There's no challenge whatsoever. So in the modern day, we have much more refined taste. I think that generally speaking, JRPGs have died for a very good reason. They are repetitious as heck. It's always the same thing you do, especially with the random encounters. I mean, it's boring as heck. It's unbelievable. But we used to play them because it was a different time when we were young. I'm assuming. I don't know. We were also different people. But nowadays, you want a game that challenges you pretty much all the way through. I don't know if you're familiar with this psychological concept of flow.
Yes.
Okay, good. Therefore, you probably know all of the 9 areas of the flow chart.
I've looked at that chart before, but my memory is a little off. I know the concept, though.
Okay, well, basically, it's fairly simple. If you take any task that you have to perform, you can plot it on a graph with 2 dimensions. One dimension is the difficulty of the task, and the other dimension is the ability of the player. Okay? So, for example, if the player is very skilled at that particular task, and the task is easy, the player falls into apathy very quickly. Okay? If the player is very skilled at the task and the task is difficult, the player is going to go into flow. Now, also, a player who's halfway in the task and halfway on the difficulty ladder may probably be in that flow area. When you veer off of the flow, you go into other areas that you may not want to be in. For example, Dark Souls tends to be much more difficult than the player's skill at the beginning. That area is called anxiety. Okay, so the player goes into an oppressive state where the game is going like, yeah, you're bad, you're dying because you're bad. And so the player may get demotivated, heavily demotivated. In order to transition to flow, you may want to have a more sort of smoother curve to get there, right? And many games of the JRPG type have a curve that tends towards the easy. So they have to use other stuff like narrative, for example, to keep you invested in the product, I'm assuming, right? Because my game is a gameplay-based game, I need to be very careful to hit that flow 45-degree line as precisely as I can. I don't know that I have, but that's the attempt.
Yeah. And yeah, like when it comes to presenting all this stuff to the player, it can become almost a never-ending challenge of trying to keep them invested. Because, like with a game like Thrusty Ship, it is fixed levels. Obviously, again, it's 75 levels, all handmade. You know, get through 1 to 75, the game is done, you win. But,
72.
Oh, I'm sorry, 72.
That's okay. Just wanted to be precise. Continue.
But like for a lot of other games out there, like again, like JRPGs being a good example of that. The amount of time it takes to play them varies greatly depending upon how you play those games. Everybody watching us right now has probably seen speedruns of like famous JRPG games. Like there's one of Final Fantasy VII that the entire game was beat in like 8.5 hours. I don't think I could beat any RPG in 8.5 hours, no matter what I do.
Fallout 2 in 26 minutes.
There we go. But like when we start talking about all these games and having these different motivators that keep somebody playing, it gets to be very challenging when you're trying to present things to a vast market of people. Now, obviously with Thrusty Ship, you know what your market is. You were aiming for more of the hardcore platform or hardcore gamer side of things.
Yes.
But we've seen games that try to appeal to everybody with as wide of a berth as possible, and sometimes it just doesn't end up working as well for them.
Technically speaking, I tried to do that as well.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, well, because my levels, right, are easy to complete-ish. Okay? But if you want to perfect every level, I promise you, Josh, you'll take longer than 70 hours.
Yeah.
You yourself, with your skill.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Oh, I'm not arguing with you with that one. It does, like, that level of mastery can be very hard. And going back to what you were saying about that kind of anxiety that can come from playing these games, like, again, Dark Souls is a good, like, your example is perfectly apt there. There are a lot of people out there who don't like being told that they're wrong, or you die, or you lose. And they can be immediately like turned off by a game like that. I guess, did you play Cuphead at all?
I did not,
Okay. Well,
but I've seen it, so I can see what it is.
okay. One of the things that the developers kind of got a little bit of flack for was their first not having like an easy mode in the game, and then people complained that the easy mode didn't go far enough. Like you couldn't beat the game if you only played on easy. You had to go to their baseline of normal difficulty. And yeah, there are people like that who, again, that they buy a game, they expect no matter what happens that they're going to be able to see that game all the way through to the end. But that doesn't necessarily work when we're talking about skill-intensive titles, I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, but I also agree with them. So it's very interesting. You brought up a few things, and I think there's a lot of segues there. I'm going to try and hit them all. Now, point number one, I think a video game is exactly like a book or a piece of music or whatever you want. You can decide to revise it if you want to, but it's your piece of art and you should stick to it if you believe it. There's going to be loads of critics there, everyone's a critic. It's very easy to be one. If you believe in your design, stick to it. Suddenly people start saying, we want an easy mode in Dark Souls. Yes. Okay, the game is not for you. This is obviously it really depends, right? This is not a fast and loose solution to anything. But my point is, everybody's a critic, so who cares? The second point was the problem of locked content behind walls. Mm-hmm. I agree with the consumer that if the consumer has purchased content, they should have access to it. But I understand why you want to reward people with content through success, right? I mean, a game is fundamentally a meritocratic system. In fact, it's probably the only meritocratic system left on this planet. But at any rate, the way I've solved that problem is by putting the grinding system in, meaning that every level can be accessed by basically grinding previous levels if that's what you want to do, and you can skip the levels, meaning you can see them all, but you may not be able to succeed at them. Mm-hmm. Now, you may not unlock the secret ships, etc., 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 but in essence, I have veered towards giving the player who wants to simply see content the ability to, in fact, see that content. Sort of the equivalent of having a test drive mode in a racing game, right? That sort of stuff. I like these mechanics. I think they make sense, and they're not excessively laborious to make. So it's logical to do this. But constructing an easy mode, completely watering down your game's design, I think is a bad idea. In fact, I don't have difficulty levels in my game, just as Dark Souls doesn't. I think having difficulty levels in games is essentially an admission of failure on the game developer's part, in a sense, because I wasn't able to develop something that would work in a cohesive fashion, unless the difficulty level is the way it was done in the old Thief games. I don't know if you've ever played them. Those are incredibly intelligent difficulty systems, where the difficulty would just increase the amount of objectives you had to do during your night out with Garrett. So it was a very different concept, a very different take on difficulties, which I really, really liked. Yeah. If the difficulty increases the HP of the opponent and decreases yours, I mean, that's just boring.
Yep.
That's not worth it.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. And yeah, Ether was mentioning Perfect Dark. I remember GoldenEye did that as well. Even something like a Ninja Gaiden for the Xbox went that route, with each difficulty level basically just restructuring the entire game around different enemies and different drops. But yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, just raising stats doesn't really make things more interesting. It just increases the amount of time it takes to do something. And it's the same thing that befell a lot of JRPGs when they put in a quote-unquote hard mode, and all they do is just make the enemies do, like, 3 times more damage and 3 times more health.
Yeah. A game is not a mere arithmetic simulator. You need more in it.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. We are coming close to 2 hours. And this has been a great chat, Mike. And if you're free in the future, I would love to have you back on again. Because, again, these kinds of conversations we can just go on till the end of time with.
Hey, no problem.
But I think because I do have my game stream to get to in probably the next 30 or so minutes, I do want to begin to wrap things up because I think 2 hours is when everybody starts to get a little bit tired of talking and watching. So, for the chat watching us right now, if you have any questions for Mike regarding Thrusty Ship, indie dev, anything like that, please get them in the next few minutes. This will kind of be our last call for questions here. But I guess one thing I definitely want to ask you about when it came to Thrusty Ship, again, with the 72 levels and how you kind of design or iterate on the new mechanics and new elements, how did you decide when to end the game? Like, was there anything that was like left out? Like, could you have sat there and go, oh, I could make another 40 more levels if I wanted to?
Yeah, I could have. I just didn't think that more content was necessary to provide my user base with sufficient value for their money. I, in fact, have prepared the game to be completely modular and capable of taking in more content. I am presently working on a level editor for Thrusty Ship that will be client-facing, meaning that you users will be able to use it to create levels and send them to your friends and hate each other. It's capable of taking in a lot more content than it's got.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought, 3 is a decent number. It makes sense. The game takes several hours to complete. I've play tested the bejesus out of it with north of 100 people, so I've made absolutely sure this game works okay, and it's long, and it's not long in the sense of tedious, but long in the sense that it's got a lot to offer. Mm-hmm. I stopped when I felt it was all right to stop.
Okay. And speaking about playtesting and kind of the growth of the game, I wanted to touch on that for a second. Like, when it came to just the overall design, I guess, now obviously with the whole story at the beginning about kind of how Thrusty Ship developed and this behind the scenes drama, did, like, once you got your hands firmly on it and you were designing it, did you make any, like, radical changes? Because we've talked about this before with many other developers and how, no plan survives first contact. Like, did, like, the game kind of, like, from day one or when you first started out, kind of that vision stay consistent from beginning to end?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, it's an easy answer. The thing that surprised me about Thrusty Ship, I recall saying on stream many times, I was going like, how in the bloody world does this game keep on having new mechanics I'm not aware of? Right? And by new mechanics, I mean like little nuances that you'll discover. If you ever sink your teeth into it properly, you'll discover stuff like, for example, I can break boxes with the side of my ship way faster than with the front of my ship. And if I rotate, because I have some torque, I produce more force, and therefore I can break boxes even more efficiently. I wonder how I can apply this for my time trials. And and you get all of these insane things. I mean, later levels, you haven't quite found this yet. You have found a few, but not quite. But you're getting to the point where you're going to start seeing like hints of Deus Ex in the game. Because you probably should go like, what are you talking about, you insane, crazy person? No, I mean it. Like, there will be areas where you go, okay, here is how the developer expected me to solve it. Then you look at the time trial time, and it's like 1 minute under yours.
Yeah.
And you're going to, wait, what? How? Right? And so you need to like figure out all sorts of weird alternative paths that are possible to you only because you've studied that level, you've understood it, and you go like, okay, wait a second, if I do this here, I can shave off 20 seconds. Yes, I'm going to try that. And it's super challenging. Like, I wish I could like sort of screen share and show you certain areas to sort of demonstrate what I mean. But there are these areas where when you first approach them, you go very carefully and make your way through. And when you're faster, you do incredibly risky things instead. There are, 10, 20 times faster. There's a level that can be completed in 20 seconds for the gold medal of the time trial. The silver is 1 minute 20. It's very obvious that I'm giving you a hint there as a developer You need to look outside the box. There is a solution outside the box. Not to mention the different landings. For example, in order to get 100% on a level, you need to land in all 4 different ways, right? Some platforms look impossible. Like, how do you do the barely on landing on this platform? There's nothing near it. So you need to like start really pondering your way around the game. And further, I'm a big proponent of achievements that are designed to enrich your experience as opposed to simply reward menial tasks that you're doing anyway. So most of my achievements are really odd.
Yeah.
For instance, complete this level, then this level, then this level, all in a row without dying and without breaking anything. Good luck. Right, so you need to do these 3 levels exactly in a row with the same ship without ever dying once, otherwise you need to restart, and without breaking anything. Now that's a lot more difficult when the world is surrounded by junk. How do you do it? So all of this type of stuff, I really like expanding the content of the game by trying to show you all of the possibilities in it. But all of this was sort of emergent from the game. So the vision remained the same, but the game expressed itself, and I really like this. There's something there.
And there's something I gotta ask you then as a follow-up regarding the time trials.
Yes.
The times that you set for like bronze, silver, and gold, did you basically do all that like yourself? Like, did you actually play the level to get those times?
Yes. I've played all of those with the basic ship to ensure that it's possible to do them, at least with one ship, and there are faster ships that can do it faster. But yes, I've done every single level, and some of them took me 700 attempts.
Amazing.
There will never be a game that I release that I'm not absolutely sure everything works. If you ever buy Thrusty Ship, to my knowledge, bear in mind, there are no bugs in it. None.
All right. Well, if we try and play the game again on stream, we'll see how many times I can crash the game if I'm able to. We'll see if we can put that to the test.
Yeah. And you still haven't even unlocked any of the 5 rare ships which have special abilities. They completely change the way you have to play. Totally. For example, one ship has a flamethrower.
And I was just about to bring that up too. Like, what was your design process for the various ships? Like, how would you want to push the player in different directions with them?
There's one fundamental design philosophy behind the ship's design, which is the ships must be all equivalently competent. This I take directly from Rocket League. If you've ever played Rocket League, you know that essentially every car is cosmetic. Not true. Every car is actually different. And there's a reason why absolutely every one of the pros only uses the Octane. Right? But which is the default little buggy car, right? But I wanted the same thing. So I want every ship to have a different flavor to it, but every ship needs to be competent. Now, the default ship is sort of the most balanced one. It's the most middle of the road one, right? But if you take Talon, for instance, it's way faster. So it does things very different. It also has a different shape, right? And so on. And then later, when I was asking the artist to keep on creating more ships because I wanted more content, the artist simply spitballed a few and literally invented some of them that looked in a certain way. And by just looking at the look, I went like, you know what? That would be cool if I did something weird with it. So then I created my secret ships. And I went like, okay, this one looks a bit like this. I'm going to turn it into that. The one with the flamethrower looks like a dragon. So I went like, brilliant. You're officially the dragon. You're going to have a flamethrower. Fact. And that's how I went about it.
All right.
Yeah, the flamethrower shares the fuel. Yes, Oscar.
Awesome. Question from Mike earlier. What does he think the game dev craft is?
I don't know what the question means.
Yeah,
I'd love to answer it, but I'm not sure what it means.
I'm sure he'll clarify that in a minute or so.
Yeah.
So, while we're waiting then, I guess to begin to wrap things up from my side of things, I guess the big question then for you, Mike, is like, what's next for Thrusty Ship and also for In Principle?
So for Thrusty Ship, I'm currently working on a big art update. The art is going to be switched from pure 2D to 2.25D, I like to call it, because it's not really 2.5D in that it doesn't use 3D assets, but it has 3D techniques to give the sensation of depth a little bit. The second thing I'm trying to do is do this editor. These two are converging towards one large update for the game. At the same time, I'm going to try to talk to publishers with this update, telling them, hey, I'm planning on doing this update. I'd like to move the game on Switch as well. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to help me promote it? Here's what I've got. Here's what I want to do, etc. And I'm hoping this will work. I'm going to keep on trying and help some friends who are trying to develop a TAS system for Thrusty Ship. For those who do not know, a TAS is a tool-assisted speedrun, because this game is begging to be speedrun, but nobody wants to do it at the moment because nobody knows it exists. And keep promoting the existence of this game. In April, I'm going to a convention in a town nearby where I'm going to be presenting it and hoping that leads me to some sales and some stuff. I'm trying to coordinate all of this together. And if even this completely fails and I can't go anywhere, that's fine. I'm just going to drop Thrusty Ship and leave it for posteriority. I'll keep organizing all of the discounts as they come. I have also just started working on a new prototype, which is going to be a roguelike XCOM-like game. I'm really liking where it's going so far. One thing that I'll also keep on doing is streaming. I'll stream every single hour of my development, or close enough that we can approximate to that. So that's basically all of my future.
All right. Well, then, again, it has been a fascinating chat. I don't see Mike leaving a follow-up, so we may just have to leave things there. All right, let's see. What is a rogue? Yeah, no, that's another hour right there, Shark.
Well, I just use the term because it's so predominant, so popular, so I use it. That's really it. But basically a randomly generated level with randomly generated happening stuff. By the way, I don't like randomness, so intelligent random generation.
All right. All right. Oh, wait. Craft is an artistic term. I guess this question is more about, like, I guess the philosophy of game development. Like, do you have one, or like, what do you think of it?
I'm not sure how to answer that. If somebody were to ask me, what do you think the art of being a blacksmith is, mm-hmm. I'm sure we could find hundreds of different examples of blacksmiths. So I'm not really sure what criteria define a game dev. I mean, for example, I'm a fairly skilled game dev. I like to make complete products that are worth your money, arguably, right? Does this make me a good game dev? Well, all data points to no. So I don't think that's a game dev, I suppose. I suppose I'm not a game dev after all. But then again, that's what I do. So I'm not really sure. I'm just not sure. I don't know.
All right, fair enough. But I think we will end things here. Let's see. Power Tactical RPG.
No, I have a thing to say about Battle Royale. And
sure.
I promise this is the last thing. Battle Royale is a disgusting system. Battle Royale, what it does is it promotes dishonor. So instead of pitting two people face to face, beat each other, may the best man win. In Battle Royale, 3/4 of the confrontations are backstabbing someone who's looting someone else they've just backstabbed. Mm-hmm. It's pathetic. I think Battle Royale is a damaging type of game for what people who... I'm not going to go there. Battle Royale is the type of game that worsens society. It makes people think that backstabbing others is desirable or normal. No, it's terrible, and you should play good games instead, like Quake 3, if you want to play a first-person shooter. right? When we face each other, face to face, okay? Or Unreal Tournament with the railgun mod on. Play games where your skill is going to defeat your opponent, not your happenstance or not your ability to be a snake. That's my opinion.
And that we could probably say for a podcast number 2 when you're free, Mike. We'll talk more about that.
All right.
All right, but I think with that we are going to wrap things up for here. It has been a pleasure having you on. This was a great cast. So many amazing topics we went into, and I hope the people watching enjoyed things as well. So, I guess for you, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to say to end the cast on?
Yes, I'll end very quickly. I enjoyed myself as well, and I appreciate you giving me this opportunity as well as playing my game. That's very much appreciated on my side. What I am going to say is this. I am a small game developer who is a game developer in craft, as Mike would point out, I guess. And I have been consistently failing so far in the sense that I'm not capable of making anything back from all of my investments. If you guys see like what you've heard from me and like what it is that I've done with the game that I've done, by all means, please consider supporting me, because by supporting me, I don't mean buying my stuff. That's not the point. But tell friends about the existence of this, because I don't know how to get this game in the hands of people who would love it. Right? I'm not interested in people buying it for the sake of buying it. I want people to buy it because they think they will like this. There's also a demo available on the Steam page. It's right at the top, first line. Mm-hmm. You can try it out and see what you think. It's a skill-based game. It's going to keep you occupied if you're a perfectionist, and it's going to make you better at playing it over time. Mm-hmm. That's, sorry, a bit of self-promotion, but I don't think it was too sleazy, was it? I think it was okay.
And I say the same thing. If you enjoy my work, please, share the word, get it out there. Start bugging people. Like, if you like game design, come here to Game Wisdom and all that. But I guess one last thing then. Do you have any social media you would like to plug right now? Where people can find you on Twitter, Facebook, all that other great stuff.
Yeah, on Twitter I'm in Principle Inc., I believe. I have a Facebook, but I never use it because I hate everybody on Facebook. I mean, it's as simple as that, I really do. I don't care what you had for breakfast, sorry. And I use Twitch a lot. So Mike_in_principle on Twitch. I stream essentially every day. And I essentially provide... I would say 4 services to the people who watch me. Service number 1 is showing them how I do things. Service number 2 is answering questions and helping out. I've done it many, many, many times. And service number 3 is giving you honest feedback. Don't come in expecting me to cuddle you. It's not going to happen. You show me what you have, and I will tear it a new hole if it deserves it, in my opinion. And this is, by the way, what you want. Mm-hmm. Okay? If people are lying to you, they are the worst backstabbers you can possibly have, because they're telling you, oh yeah, your game is pretty good, you spend 2 years on it and then it's a turd. That's terrible. Yeah. Right? You have wasted your time and money. And the 4th service that I provide is, I teach my kids how to code. So I do really simple code on live that can be watched, and those videos also get posted on YouTube afterwards. Which reminds me, I need to render one. Yeah.
Can you put your Twitch link in chat? And
I certainly can.
Sure.
Here you go. So here's the Twitch link, and my Twitter is... Twitter is an effective way of reaching me, I think. It's just I don't really use it as much as many other people seem to do. So don't expect me to update you with pointless stuff. I just don't do that. Sorry. There we go. But thanks very much for everyone's attention. I appreciate it.
All right. And like I said, this has been another really great cast. And for everybody watching us who've stuck with us for these last 2 hours, or even more than that by now, thank you again. If you're watching this, again, please consider supporting Mike and supporting myself. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, it's patreon.com/GWBicer. All VIP supporters can get access to ad-free and early access to these design talks. And be sure to check out my first book, as well as GameWisdom.com, for more discussions on game design. But for the live folks watching, I'll be back later on this evening for some gameplay. And for everybody else, thank you for tuning in, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where examine there on science of games. Until next time, folks, have a great evening.